Hi, my name is Lydia Kasopoulos, and I'm a strategy and emerging technologies advisor with a deep passion for body data tracking and human performance. This set of healthy aging protocol interviews delves into meaningful human connection. I'll be asking people what is meaningful to them in relation to human connection and how they go about cultivating meaningful connection as part of their personal healthy aging protocol. I hope you find this to be of interest. Hi, John. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about meaningful human connections.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So first, I want to have you introduce yourself. Tell us about you. Who are you? And what are the wonderful things you're doing?
Well, thank you. My job, I work at the IEEE Standards Association. IEEE, the larger organization, is the world's largest technology association. Currently, I am the staff lead for a project called Planet Positive 2030, and I am also building and running a regenerative sustainability practice. So that's my job. And I came to IEEE after writing 3 books. I used to write for The Guardian, for Mashable. I was a professional actor in New York City for a while. I'm still a musician. I've played blues for about 40 years, harmonica, guitar, and sing. I worked in business development for a big podcast organization, and then I was EVP of social media at a global PR firm. And then I ran a nonprofit called the Hackathon Project. And most importantly, I guess, I'm a dad.
That's amazing. I love how varied your life is. But there's something missing here. So you started something called Togetherland, which I think is quite interesting. So if you could just tell me a little bit about Togetherland.
Well, thank you for asking about that. The latter part of my life, my adult life, when my dad passed away in 2011, really transformed, I guess mainly to sort of honor his memory, but his work in psychiatry. He formerly was a psychiatrist, and my mom's work as a minister in the Methodist tradition, but really as a person who studied scripture, Judeo-Christian scripture. But really, my mom is just this incredible font of wisdom where she doesn't proselytize. Her life is an invitation. And so my parents are an incredible inspiration to me. And I became very moved by the need to help with isolation and loneliness because of my friend, Dr. Lydia Kostopoulos, actually, who sent me a report by Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is the US Surgeon General, called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. I had known how extreme aspects of loneliness were, but it wasn't until I read this report. So seriously, thank you, Lydia, that I knew I just felt a calling. I had to do something to try to proactively help people, especially in the Western world, who have been taught, I think, a lot of times to be insulated, to be by yourself. There's strength in being alone. And what the science of that report shows is one's preference to be alone could be about solitude, the desire to find, connection by yourself. That's not the issue. It's when it turns to isolation, where you don't have access to social connection. The report shows the actual physical and mental harm that is currently happening. It is literally an epidemic, and it's now been mirrored by the World Health Organization. So I've created a workshop program. It's a program called Togetherland. And it's starting with a workshop. Lydia said she's going to run one in Glasgow. Yay, Lydia.
Yes, I look forward to it.
And the purpose is to equip people, especially, again, Westerners, with tools, much like we're talking about here, things like positive psychology, gratitude, altruism. But I have this new idea called the scene transition. So like the green transition, one has to see oneself, you have to see others, and then you have to see nature. And then in those 3 things, it's going to form a lot of my answers probably today.
That's really great. So, healthy aging is not just about taking care of your body or eating well or exercising. It's also about having good human connections. So I want to start first with what your healthy aging protocol is. Tell us about that before we get into the meaningful human connection part.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate your kind of giving a name to that, a healthy aging protocol. I also like that the acronym is HAP, H-A-P, which is kind of like happy. And I think the past number of years, especially since COVID, and I went through some really intense personal stuff, specifically a divorce. And now I have a new partner and I'm very much in love. And the healthy aging protocol, a lot of it for me was a combination of how the physical, mental, and spiritual, there needs to be a harmony there. Mm-hmm. And physical, I'll also put kind of like the day job, work. I can be very intense about work. I love my work, both at IEEE and in general, and I can work 60, 70-hour weeks. And a lot of times it doesn't seem like work. But then the other people in my life where those relationships are not being cared for, that affects me. So my healthy aging protocol and a lot of the inspiration for Togetherland is to make sure that there's sort of like constant reminders about certain things, like your physical body. You can't be like, I forgot to not overeat for the last 6 months, right? If you overeat or whatever for 6 months, it will start to make itself apparent and it will harm your physical self. Likewise, if you exercise and you take care of yourself, it's got to be a daily regimen or a weekly regimen at least to have those improvements. So for my healthy aging protocol, I'm really trying to combine mental, physical, and spiritual and have a harmony where I can really say, how do I prioritize certain things that have to be maintained that a lot of times I have let go?
And I know that for the physical part, you have your 10,000 step system. And what I love about it is how you have taken those 10,000 steps to be your Northern Star. And you have then changed your schedule, modified your schedule to fit around the 10,000 steps. Could you talk a little bit about how you do that? I think it's really fun.
Sure. After my divorce situation started, I started running. I love running. And I lost about 60 pounds, which was great in one sense, or multiple senses, mainly because I was connecting the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. Also music. When I run or walk, if I'm not on phone calls, I listen to music. And because I am a musician, maybe not professionally, but as an actor, I played professionally on Broadway and stuff. There's a connection to a consciousness that I immediately am able to connect to let's call it the spiritual world. A lot of times I think I speak better in music than I do in words. And a lot of that comes from you really have to listen to other musicians, or you have to listen. And it's not necessarily even listening. It's more of like be present for the voice and the music that you have within you. Or then when you share it, and I still struggle with this a lot, you get kind of caught up in performance. Like, will Lydia like this song? Which is fine, but it's sort of like, that's up to you. You're the listener. Lydia is going to receive it. I can't determine how she receives it. So I bring this up because the 10,000 steps were actually reminded to me as a tool by my partner, Gabrielle, who is just wonderful. And she's fantastic about sometimes being just saying like, go do 10,000 steps a day, and sometimes it's as simple as that. A healthy aging protocol for me with the 10,000 steps starts from, well, just do this one thing. And the 10,000 steps bring in multiple things. Sometimes I do work calls, but I'm also outside. So I'm that harmony of connecting myself to nature. If it's raining or snowing too much, I can, go to the gym or whatever. But in general, even if it's really cold, I try to be outside because then I'm viscerally connecting with nature as part of those 10,000 steps.
I love that. So let's now get into the part of the meaningful human connection as part of healthy aging. First, what is meaningful human connection to you? What does that mean? What does that look like?
It's a great question because meaningful human connection, a lot of it, I would say, I would see through the lens of positive psychology, which I've studied for over a decade. I wrote 2 books, my last 2 books, Hacking Happiness in 2014 and Artificial Intelligence in 2016, quote from leaders in positive psychology a lot. Martin Seligman, Barbara Fredrickson. I always mispronounce his name. The guy that wrote Flow. It's like Sakim and High. I always mispronounce his name. But what I love is that there's science, meaning observable, repeatable experiments where meaning for all humans, apparently, not just Westerners, Northerners, Global South, men, women, trans, like any way a person identifies themselves, nonetheless, at least for the moment, until maybe we all get augmented by chips in our brain or something. We have these hormones in our brain. The short term is called happy hormones, things like dopamine, et cetera. And these are chemicals. They are intense things that form our short term emotions. Or in positive psychology, I'm going to forget. Hedonic is the term. Hedonic. Hedonic happiness is this momentary kind of like, I'm totally happy right now. It's very ephemeral, very emotional. It's real. It's very real. But it's different from a long term, what's called flourishing, or the Greek word is eudaimonia. Mm-hmm. And I bring that up because meaning for me, first of all, is just recognizing in our humanity, not every moment is going to be, this deep like eudaimonia, like you have to live your life and things happen. But I think for me, the more that I'm able to be in the moment, like this moment, and I'll just say it, I'm really excited to be interviewed by you, Lydia. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Like,
I'm
this is one of those moments
you.
where it's just like, yeah. Well, and meaning, like right now, today, I'll get to say, I got interviewed by Lydia today. That is awesome. And I can say meaning. The last thing I'll say about meaning is being present in moments that are unlike this one, right? Which seem like they're really going to suck. I'll give you an example. I was driving to see my mom from New Jersey to Columbus, Ohio. It's about a 10-hour drive. And I called Cigna, my healthcare providers, and I had to go into a call. I've called them like 9 or 10 times about something. And I have had, not proud of this, fits of rage because I keep saying the same thing over and over. And then I was driving and I was talking to this young woman at a call center, didn't work directly for Cigna. And I was like, John, the next hour, you're going to call, and in your mind, you said like, I'll take care of this. I'm going to get rid of this task. But you're speaking to another human you're never going to speak to again. You can either make meaning in this moment or you can not. And why don't you try to connect to the human? And so I said, like, Happy New Year. And we chatted for a minute. And so then it was still hard and not really fun, but there was meaning because also I chose to try and see where meaning might arrive.
That's so amazing. That's like allowing space to have meaningful connection in any moment. And I think a lot of people focus a lot on just like meaningful friendships, but I think there's a lot of space for meaningful human connection anywhere. And that's a perfect example. So thank you for sharing that. So then how do you go about actively and deliberately seeking, nourishing, building meaningful human connections in your life?
I think the reason I mentioned this idea of the scene transition, besides the fact I used to work in PR, so my brain works in sound bites sometimes, and I hope because I'm a musician, I hear words as sound. And then as a writer, I just love comparing words and phrases. And also when there are phrases like the green transition, which is a pretty popular term right now, although it means different things to different people, it's already in some part of a person's brain maybe. And so you can say the scene transition, and people hopefully will go, what do you mean? I know about the green transition. I don't know about the scene transition. So I bring this up because, and again, thanks for you for sending that report from Dr. Murthy. A part of having meaningful connection, I think that is really lost, especially, again, I'm not trying to pick on the Western world or the global North per se, but there's a lot of monetary and economic things I've written about for years that's GDP, and if you want to use words like neoliberalism or the patriarchy or competition or these terms, there's a lot of useful terms. They can distract, I think, for me at least. I find that in the essence of when I start talking to someone else, if I can remember self-kindness, not always feel it. I mentioned the divorce. I mentioned, I know that I'm kind of a grumpy bugger at times. And when you write books about like happiness and well-being, and then you're kind of grumpy, or maybe even a jerk or something, it's for me, I can get into a place where the loneliness and isolation work is really exciting for me because it's this wonderful personal way to have meaningful connections with others when I remind myself I don't have to have a conversation with Lydia or someone else and enter the conversation and feel like, am I smarter or better or faster or more efficient than this person? If I arrive and part of my daily, like you talked about earlier, my healthy aging protocol is to first sort of take a deep breath before I talk to anybody, experience nature, a stillness, a peace, my faith, on a personal level, and then say, I want to arrive at this call with a level of self-kindness, which is not forgiveness for any of the quote stuff I've done that I still need to work on. It is not me saying, I'm this wonderful well-being guy who, whatever, not at all. It's an awareness. And this is where I love programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, these ideas of like 12 steps that don't ever really change. It's not like you can ask forgiveness from certain people, but that person, the relationship may change, but you're going to inadvertently hurt someone else and then need to get forgiveness from them. So I say that because the scene transition, to close up this answer, I'm trying to approach things in kind of a 3-point way every day of my life. One is a self-kindness, to just go, hey, John, yeah, you screwed up different things. You hurt people. You're human. But now give yourself the kindness of saying you have self-worth. And that's what a lot of the Togetherland work is saying, do I have worth even just for being alive? My answer is yes. Then with that preparation to go to someone else, what's so exciting about the science of positive psychology and meaning is that compassion and altruism, as measured by things like an MRI machine, numerous tools that can be aided by artificial intelligence in terms of like organizing data, etc. But we don't need those tools. It's if I say a word of kindness to you, Lydia, and your brain changes, other people watching it, the same thing happens. It's kind of like the Hallmark effect, watching those shows over Christmas vacation, like those warm and fuzzy feelings. And then finally, the last part of the answer to this question is nature. I'm not there yet with nature, meaning I understand the depth and gravity of caring for nature and the urgency of it. I think I'm like walking into a consciousness and reality of fully, I don't know that I'll ever fully get there, but I appreciate nature when I'm in nature. But I'm really trying to learn from different indigenous cultures and other cultures. How can I sort of speak with nature? Like the day that I can actually hear a tree is going to be one that I rejoice in. I'm excited because more and more reading different indigenous literature. This happened over the break. I'll see a bird or saw a bird, and I just looked and I said, "Hi, brother." It just happened. And I rejoice in that because the worth of myself, recognizing the consciousness of being literally part of the planet, I'm made up of water, for instance. There's this joy and peace that comes from recognizing that I have worth because I wake up and see this beautiful planet that does provide for me and loves me. But now the urgency of caring for myself is that much higher for nature because I recognize that to really care for Lydia, another person, I have to understand how to care for the planet.
That's so amazing because in essence, if I understood correctly, your way to build, nourish, and maintain meaningful human connection starts with yourself. And it starts with practicing self-kindness, as you said, and recognizing self-worth, and then engaging also with nature and appreciating the value of nature. And it sounds like with those combined, then you are kind of this whole person that's ready to give yourself to others in an authentic way. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, and if you'll allow me, I'll share a quick afterthought. While you were speaking, I have a metaphor, and sometimes metaphors help me picture things. As a musician, when I go on stage to jam or play with other blues musicians, a big form of self-kindness, but other kindness is you have to tune your guitar. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard an amazing musician, and for whatever reason, they just didn't have the time to tune. Now, it doesn't mean that the music is going to be bad, but you'll hear this. In fact, Jimi Hendrix, who's one of my heroes, a lot of his playing, which I love, because the guy was just a god to all guitar players. You can't listen to the guy I think, and play guitar. You don't have to like his music, but you can't not recognize the guy. But he's sometimes out of tune, which is like excellent. There is imperfection in Zeus of guitar playing. Anyway, as an individual, tuning myself, for lack of a better metaphor, is not about anyone else yet. It's me preparing to have that instrument, me, be with other people. Then when I'm with Lydia, this is an interview, so it's a different kind of setup, but like, is if I'm present and can listen, then as a musician, that's how you actually play music. Like, people think you learn guitar for 30, 40 years. And the answer is, it depends on maybe the style of music and the milieu. But in general, the art of playing music well is listening and being present. Because once you know, like, my guitar is tuned, everyone else is playing in the key of A, is the song starts, and you all invisibly are trying to commune with each other to create a consciousness called a vibe or a groove. And then I bring this up because the final component, and as an actor for 15 years, I wrote a book on acting, etc. Like, I recognize that the audience is a critical part, that other, in that sense. The audience is the receiver of that music. But once they receive it, there's a consciousness of they give back, right? It's the energy of, like, if everyone on stage is like, whew, and you start playing and you say, here's a gift I have. In the audience, you know, I play a lot like in bars and pubs because I do like blues pickup and stuff, right? So the audience may be like, I'm drinking a beer, I'm eating a burger, thanks for the background music. And that's totally cool. But still, the point is that, like, in that moment will only exist in that moment of time. And as that music goes out and people kind of look up, the hope is that they'll be receiving it, and then their energy and their consciousness invisibly comes back. And as a musician, when you can feel that and then kind of inspire it, then it's like, you know, you're using not mechanics, but things I know about having done it for 40 years. Like, you don't play 6 ballads in a row, for instance. You know, you play a ballad and then you go to an up-tempo song, another up-tempo song, and you're crafting an experience. But all that is said to say that as a musician, again, if the analogy is helpful, arriving, you have the instrument tuned, being present. Mainly the act is about listening to other people for the one-on-one, and then the sharing it with the world. Likewise is then you give the gift, what you hope is a gift. It should be a gift in your own mind. And then you give it and you wait to receive, and then you adjust.
That's such a powerful analogy, particularly, you know, the way that you explained it as a musician. And I totally can see that, because every time we connect with another human, there's a back and forth dance, and, you know, there's the active listening. And but also, you're right that we come to each person in each moment with whatever it is that we're thinking in our head that day. And the tuning is also important. So it sounds like, all right, so we have the self-compassion and the self-worth and connecting with nature as kind of like the groundwork to prior to meaningful human connection. Know thyself. But then the tuning part is being deliberate about yourself in that moment when you're connecting with somebody. And that's how you can derive meaningful human connection. And then, like, being observant of that, like, back and forth. That sounds so fascinating. I love that. Gosh, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really a very powerful perspective on how to go about meaningful human connection, just anywhere with anyone at any moment in time. So yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time. If there's anything you want to add before we go.
Well, I want to say thank you to you, Lydia, for your inspiration with just this whole project that you're doing. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I really appreciate being invited. And I guess the Togetherland work, which I'm hoping to bring into IEEE, but I wanted to kind of workshop the workshops first. My final point would be whoever listens to the amazing Dr. Lydia Christopoulos, my message is you have worth just for being born, right? All the wonderful things, not you, Lydia, but your viewers and listeners that you're going to do, awesome. Those goals, wonderful. But just being there, when you watch this video, you have worth, and you are worth the time to invest in yourself with the type of work Lydia is talking about. And then in terms of loneliness and isolation, the opposite of those things is social connection. And I'll be writing more about this with the Togetherland work, but one thing that Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's the US Surgeon General, recommends is you pick 3 people in your mind, 3 people who are part of your day. Can be a parent, can be a close friend, but also maybe 1 or 2 people who are colleagues that you talk with. And make an effort, literally today when you're watching this video from Lydia, to say something to them, right? And Lydia's work on meaningful connection, awesome, but one thing with the Togetherland work that I've discovered is you don't necessarily have to have like a deep conversation with someone. The meaning comes from the interaction. So it could be your barista when you get your Starbucks. And before you give that person a kind word, just be present in your head and say, apparently I can help ease my own loneliness or isolation by saying a kind word to someone else. And then that's sort of a social science way of asking yourself a couple of questions where you're preparing, right? Then you say a kind word, and you got to recognize that the barista may be like, yeah, okay, and like getting on the next person, right? Don't worry if how people receive those signals, messages, kindnesses from you, take some time for them to digest. And then after each interaction, here's the thing is ask yourself, how did that help you feel to establish that social connection? Because now you're being proactive in the journey. I was saying like the war against loneliness. I don't want to use military terms. There's a journey to say, what does it mean in a world where, especially the Western world, it can be very incredibly powerful all the time to hear messages, feel messages, that music, like I described as a musician, this pervasive music that's happened so often we don't even hear it anymore, that says you only have worth once you do X, right? That meaning you will feel less self-worth until you have enough money, have enough success, have kids, whatever it is, versus you have meaning for breathing. And you giving this kind word to someone in that one moment, you're the only 2 people in the universe where you're going to give that word of kindness or not. And when you give that word of kindness, your brain will change. And I guarantee your heart starts to change. And then you realize a lot of my self-worth will come from the fact that I can give these kindnesses, even if I don't always feel like I want to. And start to add that up. And the science of altruism and compassion says these things are infectious in the best possible way. And we start to work against the epidemic. It's an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. So I bring this up because the type of work Lydia is doing is enormously, hugely helpful to deal with this epidemic. And then what I'm saying is people often will be like, yeah, but people don't want to be bothered or whatever else. Well, the alternative is where we are now. It's an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. So your words of kindness will be working to help negate that.
And if people want to follow Togetherland and your initiatives, where can they find you?
Togetherland.live. Is that it? Let me double check here. Togetherland.live. Yeah, Togetherland, TOGETHERLAND.LIVE. And then on LinkedIn under John C. Havens. And my IEEE work, the new practice site, will be launched soon. But anyone can get in touch with me via LinkedIn, and love to get back together with them. And we are looking for people like Lydia who want to lead Togetherland workshops. After like a 20-minute call with me, I've already created a PowerPoint and all the tools. People can run their own workshops. And so if anyone would like to, please get in touch with me via LinkedIn.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for sharing your perspectives on healthy aging and on the meaningful human connection, how you go about it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Best of luck with the rest of the project. It's a wonderful idea.
Thank you. This series is meant to capture personal stories of individual healthy aging protocols and is for informational purposes only, and it does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. Those seeking personal medical advice should consult with a licensed healthcare practitioner.